All right, today we're diving into a story that is, well, it's one of the weirdest and honestly most brilliant things I've ever come across. It all starts with a very personal crisis on a very large boat and somehow ends up changing official company policy. You're going to want to hear this.
Yep, that's a real quote from the crew logs. The whole thing kicks off after a passenger left behind a situation that was described by the crew as looking like 3 giant pythons. But when he went to flush, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that right there is where our story really begins.
So let's just set the scene a little. It's January 19th, 2015. A passenger on the MS Viking Grace ferry had been enjoying, let's call it a potent diet of lutefisk and aquavits. This led to what the ship's log charmingly called a Nordic blockage. And after that moment of relief came a sudden cold wave of panic. The toilet was completely and utterly stuck.
I mean, just imagine it. You're in this tiny little bathroom. You've got a monumental problem on your hands. And this feeling of dread is just rising. He tried flushing again and again, but all he heard was this awful whining sound from the toilet. He was trapped.
Okay, so to really get why this was such a disaster, we have to talk about the tech. Because this is not your average toilet from home, not even close. The real heart of the problem is the ship's vacuum system. So most modern ships like this one use what's called a dometic vacuum flush system. It doesn't use a big tank of water and gravity. Instead, it's like a super powerful vacuum that just sucks all the waste away. It's actually way more efficient and better for the environment.
And the difference is pretty huge. A vacuum flush uses just a tiny bit of water, while your toilet at home can use up to 13 liters. But here's the catch. Its biggest strength is also its biggest weakness. The whole thing relies on the user getting the timing just right, which is exactly where things can go so wrong.
And we're not talking about some rare, fancy system here. No way. A staggering 85% of all the ferries in the Baltic Sea use these vacuum systems. So you can see how any little user error problem is actually a massive, widespread issue.
And that brings us to what the crew calls the common rookie flush. See, if you panic and just start mashing the button, or if you don't hold it down for the 2 or 3 seconds it needs, you don't build up enough vacuum pressure. The system just stalls out, and that is precisely what happened to our guy. So he's tried everything. He's alone. He's panicking. He flings open the bathroom door, looks down the hallway, and in this moment of just pure, beautiful desperation, he invents what is now known as the Titta Technique. The steps are so simple, it's almost unbelievable. He spots a cleaner, a Miss A. Svensson, literally grabs her, pulls her into the bathroom, points at the disaster, and says just one single Swedish word, Titta. It just means look. Then, with her watching him, he presses the button one more time. And it works. It flushes perfectly. And what's amazing is that Miss Svensson, the cleaner, she wasn't even surprised. She later explained it with this beautiful phrase, presence primes the pump. She knew that just having a witness changed everything. But why?
The secret is in the word itself. Titta isn't just a casual, hey, check this out. It's a direct command. It's an order to look, to pay attention, to witness. It's got some real weight to it.
And this is where the story gets really fascinating, because it stops being a funny bathroom anecdote and turns into this incredible case study of psychology and engineering. It turns out there's a real, scientific reason this all works.
So, according to an expert named Dr. Felix Flush, and I promise you that's his real name, the key is something he calls communal calibration. Basically, when we're alone and freaking out, we rush. But the second someone is watching us, we slow down. We become more deliberate, more intentional.
And he's got the data to prove it. His research showed that just having a witness reduces that panicked user hesitation by a measurable 35%. And that little extra moment of calm, that deliberate press and hold, is all the vacuum system needs to do its job.
You know, this is a textbook example of something called the Hawthorne effect. It's this well-known psychological idea that people literally change their behavior, usually for the better, just because they know someone is watching them. The observation forces you to follow the right procedure, even if you don't realize it.
And get this, there's a language angle too. A sociolinguist, Dr. Lola Svensson, points out that on a big ship with a crew and passengers from all over the world, a short, sharp, universal command like Titta just cuts right through all the confusion. Everyone gets it.
But the story doesn't stop there. Oh no. What happens next is a perfect lesson in how a weird little story can become a modern legend. And then
actually lead to real-world change.
So the passenger first posted his story anonymously on 4chan, of all places, way back in 2015. It just sat there for a decade. Then, in 2025, it pops up on Reddit and goes absolutely viral. A TikTok reenactment follows, it gets millions of views, and suddenly Viking Line has this huge, weird story on its hands and has to launch an official investigation.
And here's the absolute best part. The company's audit? It confirmed the whole crazy story was true and that the technique actually worked. So what did they do? They made it official policy. They literally installed signs in 1,200 cabins telling people, Titta Technique, look and press.
And the results? They speak for themselves. After they put up the new signs and trained the crew, maintenance calls for these kinds of user-caused clogs dropped by a massive 19%. This weird little trick, born out of total desperation, was now saving the company real time and money.
So a story that started with some bad food and a plumbing nightmare ends up teaching us this amazing lesson about psychology, communication, and the surprising power of just having a witness. It kind of makes you wonder, right? Where else in our lives could a little accountability, a simple look, make all the difference?